Welcome to this new episode of the Water Talks podcast, where water stories, science, and application receive the focus they deserve. I'm your host, Vanbeckevoort, and I'm delighted to be joined by my co-host, Scott, today. Hey, Scott, how are you? It's been a while.
It has, Al's. Summer's passing quickly. We finally got summer. So it's been
For sure.
fantastic and very busy spring, both travel personal and travel for work.
Yeah, what you been up to, though? Like I say, it's been a while since we were able to get together. So what's been happening in your world?
Aquatics keeps happening, and it's the time of year it's go time in aquatic environment. So everybody's excited and back on track. I had a really nice, on a personal note, trip to Hawaii. I got back
Oh,
about 2 weeks ago, and I was in
wonderful.
north end of Maui, which absolutely, if you have a bucket list, head there. It was spectacular. Else, the water is the bluest. I've been to a lot of Caribbean islands, and the dolphins and I can't even. The water is so blue, it's phenomenal. And as a water
Oh my
person,
gosh, it sounds like heaven.
incredible, incredible. I don't know how else to say it. Incredible. So yeah, it was fun.
That's excellent. And I know like it's a busy season, right? A lot of pools are starting up or have started up now for the summer season. So maybe we could talk about that for just a few minutes. I know that it's a challenge, right? An outdoor pool. So any thoughts or any kind of little tips you can, share? I know we've got an exciting guest to introduce momentarily for our summer series, but is there anything maybe you can talk about just briefly for our guests? What do you see as some of the bigger challenges when you're starting up an outdoor pool?
Well, part of the challenge people are going through is obviously staffing, that educated staff that we all talk about often. There's been some changes to the health code where
Right.
the alkalinity has been widened from 60 to 180. So that's a bit of a breather for
Yes.
folks. I was at a place this week and their alkalinity of their tap water is 230 coming in. So
Oh,
it's
yeah.
a challenge to try to make that work. So they were happy with that change. And
Mhm.
it's typical that we see around. So letting people understand that, and then it's go time here. Like everybody starts up everything in a very short amount of time, and
Right.
things aren't prepared.
Right. It's a short season, right? So like you really got to get it right. And so those are some of the challenges. I know that, yeah, at some point, maybe we should have a session on outdoor pools actually, because there's a lot more opportunity for optimization and improvement as well. I know a lot of people run it kind of at, okay, let's just dump a bunch of chlorine, let's get the stabilizer in and hopefully, we're going to be okay. But that again, there's some ways in which we can help folks out there as well, but we'll come back
And
to that
the use
maybe.
of stabilizer is a whole conversation in
Oh
itself.
my gosh. And I think we should have a conversation about that. That just reminded me. Actually, no, because I again was at an outdoor pool recently and it's people don't necessarily appreciate how impactful it is in sense of how much more chlorine you have to use and kind of this vicious circle again. And so there are better ways in which that can be managed. But I think that's a great idea for a topic. So maybe we'll do that in the winter as people are preparing for the spring, but we'll bring that forward as a topic and maybe we can look at a guest or somebody who could share some interesting information. I think Ludo comes to mind because I know he has said some controversial things at previous Better Pools conferences where people were like, what? Really? It's
Yeah,
that bad? Anyway, so I think that will be good.
I had a listen to a podcast with Dr. Roy Vore a week or two ago, and a couple really nice things came out of him. And Dr. Roy Vore is up. For those who don't know, is he was heavily involved in the building of the CPO chemistry portion. He's recognized around the world. I think he's got, I don't know, 60 papers published, etc. He's
Hmm.
the go-to person. He talked about that 1 milligram per liter of chlorine does the job, and not ridiculous amounts that we tend to
He's
get.
on our side, but you got to get your pH right, right? So you got to look after those other things as well.
Yeah,
But yeah,
it
no,
was a very interesting chat, and
yeah, no, he's a great guy for sure. Maybe we should have him again. So that'll be a good opportunity. We do have a summer series for our listeners. Obviously, you don't, you're going to be busy either operating your pool or looking forward to your holidays, one or the other. So Scott and I thought it would be a great idea to share with you a guest. I think Scott's going to introduce him for us momentarily. We're going to have a summer series for now and July, which will be just something wonderful to listen to. And it's going to be over 2 episodes, so hopefully you'll enjoy this next interview. Scott, would you do the honors and introduce our prestigious guest to our audience?
yeah, absolutely. This is a phenomenal athlete, and What a pleasure. Today we are interviewing Brent Hayden, is a world champion Olympian. Won the bronze medal. He's a four-time Olympian in the 100-meter freestyle, widely recognized as one of Canada's most accomplished sprint swimmers. And in 2007, he became the first Canadian to win a world championship title in the 100-meter freestyle, ending a 21-year drought for the country and the World Aquatic Championships. After 2012, he retired, and he did make a remarkable comeback 8 years later, qualifying for his fourth Olympic Games in Tokyo. At the age of 37, he became the oldest swimmer in history to break the 48-second barrier in the 100-meter freestyle, proving that speed, power, and resilience are timelines. And I love that because I'm still trying to get there. So,
You and me both. Yeah, I wanted to share my sentiments exactly. It was a pleasure to chat with him. I think we could have I think we could have chatted for, another 2 hours. I think it's such a compelling story. And so for our guests, we're ready to roll with the first segment of our interview. Hope you all enjoy it greatly. I certainly did. And next month, you can listen to the second part of this wonderful interview. Enjoy, guys. We'll see you on the flip side. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by Brent Hayden. Good morning, Brent. How are you?
Good morning. I am great. How are you?
I am okay, thank you. I know you're joining us from Vancouver, so it's nice and early. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. I've got my morning coffee. I'm good to go.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful. For our audience, Brent, would you mind just giving us a quick little introduction and who you are? Obviously, we're going to Scott and I. We really enjoy speaking with people who have practical experience in the industry, the aquatics industry. But could you just very briefly introduce yourself to our guests?
Sure. Yeah, so Brent Hayden. I'm a four-time Olympian. I represented Canada at the Athens, Beijing, and London Olympics, where I won my bronze medal. And then I retired for 7 years. And I came out of retirement in 2019 with less than a year to go to Tokyo and qualified for my fourth games in just 6 months. And went to Tokyo as the oldest swimmer at the Olympic Games. I'm also a former world champion, Canadian records, former world record holder. And I've just been somebody that's just absolutely loved swimming my entire life, even when I failed swimming lessons much earlier on in my career.
Wow, that is crazy. I mean, that's a wonderful history that you're sharing with us. But maybe just to go back a little ways. I mean, what were you like as a kiddo? Like, you said you failed swimming lessons. So, like, how did this journey begin for you?
I think really it just became, as most families, when they're growing up, they want their kids to be waterproofed, right?
Yes.
My parents loved taking us on trips. We would go camping a lot. We're always around lakes. So they just wanted to make sure that my sister and I were going to be able to save ourselves because if we ever,
Right.
accidentally ended up in the water. So making sure that we were getting our swimming lessons was super important for them. So even though I failed swimming lessons, my parents were very persistent. They put me in again. I failed a second time. Apparently, I just stood there with my nose above the water, just bawling my eyes out. So maybe I didn't love the water right away.
No.
But then my parents, no, but then my parents got me a private instructor. Yeah, because we found
Yes.
that the group setting wasn't really ideal for me. I was, in the words of of the instructor, was that I was a distraction to the other kids in the
Other
class.
kids. That's funny. Yes.
Yeah, so that might have been the second time I failed. Maybe the first one was the one with the water by my nose. So it got me. They got me a private instructor named Lori, and she helped me just fall in love with the water and make me realize that the water was just a place where I could explore my imagination, could run wild. So when I was in the water, I would be, an astronaut floating in space. I'd be Marty McFly flying on a hoverboard.
Cool.
Um,
Yes.
or I'd be Superman. So
Yes, of
the water
course.
became a place where my imagination would run wild. I could be whoever it was that I wanted to be, but it was on a road trip down to Disneyland where I think I felt, or my parents realized that there was something in me that they decided that to put me on the swim team. So my sister was already on the local swim team, or called the Mission Marlins, and they made sure that every hotel we stayed in on this road trip had a small pool. So we were just staying at Motel Sixes, and my
Right.
sister would have to get in the water and swim her laps, so she would be missing any training while we're on this trip. But I would be in the corner just copying what I would see her doing. So I would see her doing flip turns. My parents would see me doing, or I would see her doing flip turns. So I'd just be doing these little flips in the corner. So after the trip, I think my parents decided to just put me on the swim team, and I think kind of the rest was sort of history.
How old were you when that kind of began for you, when you really started to enjoy the water?
So I was about 5.
Oh, so
So
that's,
so
that's pretty
pretty
early.
early, still pretty early, right? But I
Nice.
was doing a lot of different sports. I was doing. I remember doing baseball. I did soccer for a number of years. Tried out for some school teams, but I was just terrible at everything, like absolutely terrible. I remember one baseball game. I was that kid that sat as far in the outfield as I could, just pulling at the grass,
Yes.
making grass piles on my pants, hoping the ball was never going to come to me. Because if the ball came to me, I was worried I was going to screw up for the rest of my team. And when I tell that story, I think that that seems to resonate with a lot of kids. They're too
Yes.
worried about not how they can help, but how can they avoid screwing up. And so I was a classic
Yeah.
case of that. But this one
Oh,
time, the ball actually came to me, and I failed in the most like unbelievable way because I didn't know where to throw the ball because there was a kid running around second, the kid was running home,
yes.
and the coach just screamed, "Throw the ball home!" So I actually turned around and faced the direction of my house and threw the ball over the fence. Yeah. So
Okay, so
just an
baseball
example.
baseball was not it for you, but that's okay, right? Like,
No,
I know
you
that
can say I take
with
things very literally.
yeah, and that's okay. Like you have to try different things and you don't know until something sticks, right? And obviously
Yeah.
swimming somehow really spoke to you once you overcame that initial fear of, the
Mhm.
water and drowning and so on and so forth. And so those early instructors must have been very good for you, those private lessons, that early experience to get you really comfortable in the water. So once you joined the team and started to do some team swimming, like what did that look like for you?
That was just in. I was on a small summer club team, so it
Yes,
wasn't really like high end or high level. It wasn't very serious. I mean, I thought it was serious because I thought
of course.
that's what the swimming was. I know for me, I think I thrived in swimming, um, you know, emotionally, just because in team sports, again, I was so worried about screwing up and letting my team down. Right? But in swimming,
Right.
if I screwed up, it only impacted me, and I could just learn what I needed to improve, and I could work on that. So I felt
Yes.
free to fail.
Huh. That's
Right?
interesting.
I was so there's no judgment, right, or
Yes.
self perceived judgment. So I think I
Right.
really gravitated towards that.
Hmm.
And yeah, we would just swim. I think maybe 5 6 months out of the year. So in summer club swimming in British Columbia is real. It's really got a culture. So every
Yes.
weekend we'd be at a different community. Use a lot of the times they were outdoor pools. So rain or shine, we would be out there, and everybody would bring their tents. And so there'd be tents just packed all around the pool. And between races, we'd be playing like card games like Uno, or maybe playing
Have
like a
fun.
travel thing of like
Yes.
Connect Four, right? And
Hmm.
that just became, a part of my every summer,
Yes.
and
You
it
grew
was
up
great.
in BC. Like that
Yeah,
was your home. Your home. Okay. So that's interesting. I mean, I guess the climate is a little bit more moderate, so that's nice. You have a longer season.
yeah. But it was like I said, a lot of the times it was really wet and cold. So we'd be spending
Okay.
a lot of times after races. The showers would always be packed because all the kids would be huddling in there, and we'd be
Are you
drinking
saying?
all the hot water from the pools.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And then winter, did you start to kind of also train in winter time then? Did you find an indoor pool where you guys could go and hang out?
Yeah, so that was the one lucky thing for our club in Mission. We actually had an indoor pool. That we were always the first meet of the season because, because the temperature was probably not going to be great. So first meet of the season, we got to kick it off with.
Okay, that's nice.
But
Okay,
but yeah,
so
in winter time, we would do like winter maintenance where we were allowed to swim up to we're allowed to swim up to 2 hours a week, because if you swim more than that, swimmer club had some very strict rules that you couldn't really, you had to compete as like an O swimmer or something. So they really tried to make sure that
okay,
everybody
changes that.
had the same
Yes,
level.
same level. Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
playing
And
field.
so till what age did you like was that part of your life? And then, what kind of changed, I guess? Like were you a teenager? Were you still, a kid? Like what happened?
Yeah, I did summer club for 10 years. I didn't start taking swimming seriously and start swimming year round until I was almost 15 years old.
Okay.
Like, yeah, because my
Huh.
birthday's in October, the season started in September. So yeah, I was like 1 month away from turning 15. And
Yes.
I'd actually asked my parents to sign me up for the first time the year before. The challenge was is that my hometown in Mission doesn't have a team
Yes.
that trains at that level.
Okay.
So in order to do this, it was going to have to be a 45-kilometer drive to go
Hmm.
to train with the team that actually trains at that level. So the closest team was in Chilliwack. There were the Chilliwack Spartans, but I knew I wanted to do that because there was a swimmer from Mission before me who I was looking up to because I'd read his story in the Little Hall of Fame named Ryan Lauren, and he was the Canadian record holder for the 50-meter freestyle. So he was from Mission, and eventually he left the Mission Marlins and went and trained with the Chilliwack Spartans, and then eventually he made it onto the national team and became the Canadian record holder. And so I would read his story and think how I wanted that for me one day. So I'd imagine myself, seeing my name in the Hall of Fame, being on the
Hmm.
Canadian team, being the Canadian record holder for the 50-meter freestyle. So it was kind of following in his footsteps
Yes.
and going
And
that
did you,
route. But
like, obviously 15 years old, like, that's, like teenagers generally want to do a lot of things, I guess. So how did you find, the single-mindedness or the focus to kind of go after a goal like that? And obviously you just said you were inspired. You had somebody who went before you, which is always very helpful. But again, there's school, there's girls, there's all kinds of other interests, I guess, that, might distract you. So how did you do that? How did you get focused
yeah,
like that?
yeah, I definitely didn't have a social life for my grade 11, grade 12 years. I think that
Yes.
it was just Saturday night was kind of like the only night that I had to hang out with my friends. So it was pretty important for me to make sure I had that. So I had at least some semblance
Yes.
of an ordinary teenage life.
Yes.
But
Life.
at the same time, I knew that if I wanted to be extraordinary, I couldn't be focused on the ordinary. I had to be able to find something
Yes.
greater than that. But I think for me, it was actually pretty easy because I had such a strong vision of who I wanted to be. And so
Hmm.
when you have that strong vision, the decisions you make to as long as they align with it become very
Right.
easy. Because I remember the very first time I actually even saw or the first time I ever realized I really wanted to actually be a swimmer, it was still very young. Right?
Yes.
I think it was 1988, because that would have been when the 1988 Olympics were on. So I
Yes.
was just flipping the channels. Back then we only had 13 channels, right? The little knob
Right.
on the side of the TV. So
Yeah.
there I was flipping the knobs on the TV, and you never see swimming on TV, right? You
Rarely. Yes.
see things like you see hockey, you see baseball, you see football, right? And I saw swimming, and
Hmm.
I asked my dad what was that, and he said it's the Olympics. And I knew right then and there that's what I wanted to do because I didn't realize that doing swimming, the one thing that I really love to do, could actually make you somebody,
Wow. Very cool. So that
right?
inspired you as well. So you saw those athletes compete and you were
Yeah.
still like what, 10 years old or like, how old were you?
Oh, still
Or
still
younger?
very young. So 88, I still would have been 5 years old. So I was probably just like
Five.
newly on the
Okay.
swim team.
So really
Um,
just started.
yeah. And even
Nice.
back in my grade 3 class, my teacher made us all stand up and say what we wanted to be when we grew up. And I stood up in front of the whole class and said I wanted to swim in the Olympics. So that was
Hmm.
always on my
A
mind,
dream.
right?
Yes.
I play
Okay.
I still have this old video game. I still have it because I have my old Super Nintendo. I have the 1994 1992 Lillehammer Olympics on Super Nintendo. I can't tell you how
Yes.
many times I would play that game. I'd put my name in, right? And I'd try to win the gold medals, and I'd see my
Yes.
name on there with a little cartoon, you know, with
Little visualization game.
right? So I think
It's
I was
cool.
always kind of like it was always sort of playing in my mind the sort of visualization,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
But
You
it
wanted
wasn't
to
like,
do
I
this.
wouldn't say it was necessarily intentional visualization. It's not like I was out seeking to, if I want this, I have to visualize it. It was very, what do I say? It was very natural,
Hmm. Yeah.
right? It
You
just
really
flowed.
felt right. Yeah. And so I guess then, as a teenager, somebody must have seen some promise in you. And obviously our physique is very important. I know that I ran, I did some sprinting as a teenager myself and people saw something there, but it takes a while like to develop to the point where your muscles and your skeletal structure and everything is really, in a place where that can happen, where you can compete at a little bit of a higher level as well. So how did that all work out for you? Because when did somebody see, okay, this guy is not just your average competitive swimmer, but this is someone who has real gifting, talent, commitment,
Yeah.
all of those things that are important.
It was late. Like, I think it was probably my ninth year in summer club swimming. Right? Like, I
Mhm.
was very mediocre for almost 10 years before I felt confident that I was actually any good at it. So I
Right.
think it was about the ninth year. We had a new coach come to the team. His name was Phil Uren. And he was the first coach that really gave me confidence, I think.
Yes.
Right? Like that, like, don't get me wrong. Like, I had great coaches, and there's some really, really great stories about how there was moments where, they made me feel very good about what I was doing or inspiration. But he was the first one that made me feel really confident in my ability. Right. So I know by the end of the year, when we do the swimming, the awards, I won the coaches award, right? Because
Hmm.
he singled me out as kind of like his favorite swimmer, I guess, for that year. Just, I guess, so he recognized that I had something. And so when I won that just, like, it just gave me that extra, like, boost, that this vision that I have in my head is not necessarily crazy. And I remember telling one of my teammates, we were actually at the meet at the Chilliwack Rotary Pool, hanging out outside of our tents, and I said, oh, how I wanted to go and start training with the Spartans the next year.
Hmm.
And he looks at me and he says, well, if you're going to do that, you can forget about winning. And I said, well, that's not the point. I just want to see how fast I can go. Right. Because all those years up until then, what had gotten me up to that point was never focusing on the result. I was very focused on my performance because most of the time I wasn't winning. And I
Right. So
think
you're focused
focusing
on,
on winning
yeah.
was almost like it was putting too much pressure on myself. And then, like,
Yes.
talking myself out, like, oh, well, this swimmer's here. He's going to win.
Yes.
Like, we had the fastest swimmer on our team. So he was the one that was always
Right.
winning. I started winning the runner ups behind him.
Yeah.
But for me, I got to that point because of just this relentless pursuit of just trying to just keep getting better. And if I could just focus on
Right.
my performance, then the results will take care of themselves.
Yes. So
And I just felt like
10,000 hours,
I
they
had more to
say.
give. Yeah.
Yes. It's kind of like that though. Like, to get really good at something, it takes a lot of time, right? It's a lot of dedication, a lot of repetition. And I know I had the pleasure of visiting actually the main training center for the Dutch Olympic team for their swim team in Holland in Eindhoven in January, and looking at their training pools, looking at the underwater cameras, looking at everything that they have to analyze performance, like it's quite extraordinary. So I imagine, maybe you didn't have the benefit of all of the things that they have today, but it sounds like you were also doing all of those things that said, okay, how do I execute a proper start? How do I execute proper movement? How do I, all of those things that you were focusing on to get better at time and
Hmm.
time again.
Yeah.
And so
And
that paid off because, so go ahead and yeah, what
yeah.
happened next?
Well, I think one of the things that sort of instilled that also a little bit early too is that, being from a small town, we only had 6 lanes, but a 6 lane 25-meter pool. But that also meant that sometimes our whole team only had 3 lanes. So I was often put in lanes with the older, faster swimmers, and
Huh.
often at the back of the lane, by the time I
Yes.
pushed off, the first swimmers are already coming back around. So I'm pushing off, like, with the fastest swimmers now only 5 seconds behind me. So it wasn't long before they would start to lap me. And every time they lapped, they'd grab my ankle and pull me back. It was just a thing that they would do every time somebody got past. So I would be wasting so much energy trying to stay ahead of them. But of course, you can only sustain that for so long. So I'd be getting really tired very quickly. And I
Yes.
think I just got tired of being tired. And so that made me hyper focus on making sure that I could find ways to go faster without wasting energy. So find a
Yes.
way to make my stroke more efficient, tighter streamlines off the wall, in and out of the flip turns faster, right? Trying
Right.
to find that easy speed. And so I think it was almost like a forced adaptation,
Yes.
in a way, to kind of try to hone the stroke, just because I got tired of people lapping me in training all the time. Um,
It's
but I remember
interesting.
at the first time I actually got to lead the lane, that was pretty special, because I was still not the oldest swimmer on the team yet. I was still swimming with the
Yes.
bigger, older swimmers, but I actually had to lead the lane, and it was like that was kind of a really really proud moment.
Yeah. And so then when did you start winning? Like when did you start really performing to a much higher level? Because obviously it's a significant, time of development between 15 and 18. I mean, and, guys actually like muscles grow and everything else, like maturity is a huge thing in athletes. Like I say, training with people who take it seriously too soon often burn out. So obviously you didn't have that. You had the endurance and the capacity to really kind of mature into it. So what happened? Like when did this start to really come together for you?
Yeah, so I think it would have been about my first year, or I could kind of say kind of transition from my last year in summer club into my first year with the winter club.
Yes.
So my last year in summer club, I was breaking meet records. I think I won every single race that year, except at provincials. I finally won my first individual gold medal, and that was a tie. I actually tied for that gold medal. And then the next year went into winter club, and kind of further back to what you asked me earlier, was that was probably my hardest 2 years in swimming were my last 2 years of high school, because I had to wake up at
Yes.
3:30 in the morning to be on pool deck at 4:45, because it was a 45-kilometer drive. So I'm so thankful for having parents who are willing to do that, so that I had the opportunities. Me and my dad, especially, created some amazing memories of driving down the highway late at night with nobody else on the
Sure.
road, and just in the car listening to our music, or me
Nice.
eating breakfast in the car while he's driving. So I'd never trade that for anything. But the end of my first year was at the time, it was the youth nationals, junior nationals, then senior nationals. That's how the nationals were split
Right.
by age group back then. They don't do it that way now. But my very first youth nationals, I won the 100-meter freestyle, and then my very first junior nationals, I won the 100-meter freestyle. And then my
Wow.
first senior nationals, I made the finals. And
Yes.
then my second nationals that summer, I won the 100-meter freestyle and made my first international team at the 2002 Commonwealth Games. So it was only like a 2 to 3 year
Short.
transition from summer club to getting onto my very first national team. So my last year in summer club was 1999. By 2002, I was on the national team, and I was the Canadian record holder for the 100-meter freestyle.
And
Pretty insane.
obviously that's amazing, right? So like that's like it's like you worked, you worked, you worked, you worked. It was frustrating. You dealt with some of the issues and then suddenly it just clicked, I guess. Like
Yeah.
it just clicked. Yeah. So
Yeah, like
freestyle, how
at the
did you
time, I will say at the time it did not seem like it was that fast, right? Three
know,
years when you're,
sure,
15 to 18, it takes forever. But
working
like looking
crazy
back,
hard.
like that was insane how quickly I went from summer club swimmer to Canadian record holder. Like absolutely insane.
And how did you end up with obviously the sprint was your you told me a little bit about it because you were always having to get those guys pull you back as they were
Yeah.
passing you. But how did you end up with the freestyle sprint? Like how did that happen?
I think a lot of that has to do with just growing up in the summer club system. The longest race was the 200 IM, and that was the only 200-meter race. Everything else was
Yes,
50s and hundreds. Now I actually thought I was going to be a butterflyer. That's where I was actually
really.
starting to. That's where to win my first races was in the 50 and the 100-meter butterfly. The freestyle didn't click for a little bit while longer, so it doesn't necessarily mean that I was necessarily better, like, or more skilled at butterfly. It just, looking back, I think it just means that I was just better than everyone else at the butterfly. At the butterfly, doesn't,
Right,
right?
right,
So again, if you look at your performance and not the results, I don't think it necessarily meant that my butterfly was actually better than my freestyle. It's just I just happened to be the fastest one there.
Yes.
So, but yeah, I think the summer club way of swimming and competing really got me into sprinting. Now, of course, you could also say genetics do play a role in that as well. If you talk about fast twitch and slow twitch and things like that.
Yes.
But I remember my very first 200-meter freestyle, and I think I was almost 16, and I didn't even break 2 minutes, and that was just the hardest thing I'd like ever done in my life. I just remember like just feeling like I was gonna die on my last 15 meters. Like, God, this
Yeah.
race sucks. Why would anybody ever wanna do this? But
Do
by the
this. Yeah.
end of the season, I think I was going by the end of that season, I think I got it down to a 151 or a 152.
Yes. Wow.
So
That's a
I
big
figured
improvement,
out how to
obviously.
do it, not burn
Yeah.
everything in the first 100 meters.
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I love swimming, and for me, it's always been a relaxation thing. But I do lanes, and it's kind of like when you're in the medium lane or the fast lane, you do want to kind of stay ahead of everybody. So I completely understand this, but as a runner, very similarly, 100-meter sprint is crazy, but 400-meter sprint is like what you're describing there. So I learned to be a 400-meter runner when I was about the same age as you, and I thought I was going to die. I thought this is
Yeah.
like the worst thing in the world because there is no way I can sprint for 400 meters. Like, it's completely not possible. So I imagine that a 200-meter freestyle sprint is like that. Like, it's
Oh yeah,
totally
like your
hard.
arms just I remember my arms just didn't want to come out of the water anymore. I was like, and
No, no.
like a good 100-meter freestyle does hurt, right? Like it's not that I was
Yes.
unaware of what real pain is. It's just it lasted longer, you
Yes. It
know.
just kept going. Yeah,
Just
for
kept
sure.
going. Like, when is this going to end?
Yes. So 100-meter became your sweet spot eventually.
Yeah.
Obviously, that's what took you to the Olympics as well. So how did you go from, obviously, you were the Canadian record holder, you were selected to represent our country. So what happened next? Walk us through that first
Oof.
uh,
Yeah,
big
when I made
experience.
made my first Olympic team for the Athens Games, like, oh, it's that childhood dream. You finally achieved that thing that you set out to achieve, and so you're hoping or expecting that this image that you have in your head that everything is just going to be magical. You're going to get to the Olympics. It's going to be great. You're going to be able to represent your country. You're going to be able to show all your doubters back home, like all the kids that bullied you in school. Because I was bullied relentlessly for being a swimmer. It wasn't a popular sport in my class. I was going to be able to show everybody wrong, right? But my first Olympics ended up not being a good experience. You say that sort of childhood dream kind of turned into my worst case scenario, right? Kind of it turned into a nightmare,
Oh,
I
wow.
guess. I guess you wanted to talk about that, right?
Oh, no, that's okay. You know what? I think failure is an important thing for us to deal with. And I think, that's life, and it's an important lesson. Like, I think sometimes we learn a lot more from our failures than our successes. At least that's my experience in my own life. And I think that that's important to share if you feel like sharing some of that, because ultimately, that's not the end of your story, but it is part of your story.
Yeah.
So, what happened?
Well, because I almost quit after those games. Like I came very, very close to actually ending my career there.
Wow.
Basically, what happened was I was using my roommate's alarm clock. I don't know why I didn't travel with my own, because we didn't have alarms on our phones yet, right?
Sure.
And I guess there was a high low switch on the power adapter. Well, at some point it got flipped, so I didn't realize that the clock was actually running extra fast. So when we set the alarm for 7:30 in the morning or something, the alarm went off. It said the time, like, and I was so excited, like, yeah, I finally get to go and be an Olympian today because I'm going to go and compete. It was the day of the 4x200-meter freestyle, and I remember getting my bag, going outside to hop on the bus to go to the cafeteria, and I walk out, and I know it's like it's awfully dark. I don't remember it being this dark this time yesterday. And like, okay, something in the back of my mind sort of saying something's wrong, but I couldn't really put my finger on it, or I didn't really want to believe it. So I got on the bus, went to the cafeteria, and I'm looking around like there's nobody here. There was nobody on the bus. There's nobody walking into the cafeteria. I walk into the cafeteria and it's just the janitor. Like just this one
Wow.
person sweeping the floor, looking at me like, dude, like what's going on? Um, so I pull out my cell phone, and then that's when I noticed the time on the cell phone it said 3:30, and my heart just dropped. I called the team manager, called twice because had to wake him up and ask him to confirm the time. He said it's 3:30 in the morning, and my heart was just all over the place, you could say. So I ended up walking back across the village. I took the shortest route there because the bus I didn't see any more buses coming, and I tried to
Yes.
go back to bed, and I was just a nervous wreck, and so I couldn't go back to sleep. And by the time I raced that evening, because I didn't swim the morning heats, they were saving me for the final. I felt like I could have just fallen asleep in the ready
Wow.
room. I was so sleepy. My coach even handed me a can of Coke just to try to find some kind of like quick
Energy.
energy just to kind of wake me up. And we were in medal contention, but I
Hmm.
just had such a disastrous relay leg that's like that fear from when I was a kid. I was worried about screwing up and letting my team down. That happened at the games, and I was single-handedly the biggest reason why our team didn't medal on that relay. So we ended up fifth. But
Wow.
the difference between my time that I went at trials and the time that I went my split on that relay, if I just equaled what I did at trials with the benefit of the relay takeover, because that gives you extra more speed,
Right.
we would have had that medal. So not only did I
Wow.
not get a medal, there are three other guys that I swam with that also didn't get a medal as well, and that broke me.
So thank you to our audience for joining us on this episode of the Water Talks podcast. I hope you found the first segment of this interview with Brent fascinating. Like I say, it's inspiring. It's not just our successes, but our failures that really define us, who we are, and how we can learn how to be resilient. And, for me, it was humbling for sure. Like Scott said at the beginning, it's something that we all aspire to and we can all learn from for sure. Enjoy the rest of this beautiful summer. We will see you again in July. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel or any other podcast platform. If you have questions about Brent or any future ideas for episodes, please do email us at mywatertalks@sunnyquebec.com. From Scott and I, have a wonderful rest of the day.